Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. And in this 10-minute moan, the topic is I'm going to look at the possibility that Scottish Greens may just about to bring down the SNP government and how that could happen. Now, on Wednesday night, we saw a leaked story hit social media and some of the mainstream media about Scottish government's ditching of their 2030 CO2 targets. Obviously, this was a policy that was part of their massive reasons why the Green Party get involved with them after the 2021 elections. Now, although the target was put in place since 2019 by Nicola Sturgeon, it was obviously something that the Greens agreed to and something that was quite important to them as an environmental party. So then come Thursday, Mary McCallum, she's the net zero minister, she got up in Holyrood and made it public that the Scottish Government were ditching their CO2 emissions target that they'd set to achieve by 2030. And then obviously she went on to blame Westminster because that's what SNP do. Now, Patrick Harvie was interviewed by STV just after this announcement, and he was asked quite clearly by the STV reporter if he was embarrassed by this, which I think he evidently was. And then he was asked if he should step down from government because of this. And he claimed on camera, no, you shouldn't do that, because the best place to be to effect change, climate specific stuff, was from within government. So his opinion was that he shouldn't stand down, and indeed the Scottish Greens should still remain in government with the SNP. Now, later on Thursday, the NHS Scotland banned the puberty blockers for under 18s as per the cash report findings and recommendations. This set a group within the Scottish Greens into meltdown. This really upset the Rainbow Greens, who are their LGBT plus thingy bob AZY group, and they had previously voiced concerns about Brian Souter possibly starting to support SNP again as a funder. Brian Souter had been a long time funder of the SNP, but he'd pulled out his support towards the end of Nicola Sturgeon's time in power, and it looked as if Humza Yousaf was trying to court him back in to support the SNP financially. And this Rainbow Greens group, they were most upset with this because they had said that Souter previously had been against teaching LGBT stuff in primary schools, and they weren't happy with that. And they felt that if he was to be involved with the SNP as a funder, and just a funder, fundraising guy, then they were going to call at that time for the Butte House Agreement to be scrapped. For those who don't know what the Butte House Agreement is, that was the agreement that was signed by the Scottish Greens and the SNP when the SNP needed the Greens to form a government back in 2021. So that's who the Rainbow Greens are, quite active. They don't like anything that goes against their ideology, not necessarily climate change stuff, but transgender issues are important to these people as well. So they were really upset about the puberty blocker. They felt this was unfair for transgender children. They felt that they should be allowed to have puberty blockers, and they were up in arms. They found 100 signatures from within their group, which they were going to present to the Scottish Green, the main party, and demand, on the puberty blocker thing alone, demand that he should have an EGM, an extraordinary general meeting, where they wanted the members to be able to vote on abolishing the Butte House Agreement. And obviously, if they were successful, that would mean the Greens coming out of government and not having the ministerial positions anymore, like Slater and Harvie have. So there's now two reasons for the Greens to be unhappy. The Rainbow LGBT mob, they were unhappy about the blockers, and some other people in the party were unhappy with the climate change target being abolished. So as yesterday progressed, the Greens, on Thursday night, I believe they had a meeting with some of the members where Harvie and Slater fielded questions from the floor, and they announced that they are in fact going to have an EGM which will let their members decide if they should still remain in government via the Butte House Agreement. Now, some people seem to be jumping on that this is purely about climate change, but the reality is this whole notion of scrapping and letting the members decide about the Butte House Agreement and if it should be scrapped or not, this started by their LGBT wing. And I find this incredible because the Greens are, at the heart of their party, environmental activists looking after environmental and climate specific items. And now, as they evolve, they become more of a cheerleader for LGBT rights than climate change. So how some of the newspapers and stuff are just jumping on that, they're going to have this debate and this vote purely because of climate change, I find a bit bizarre, because there was no calls for them to have an EGM when the climate target was scrapped, but there was definite factual calls for them to scrap the agreement with SNP when the puberty blockers thing became a thing. So I find that a little bit bizarre. And so what happens next? So obviously they're going to have the vote. They've not named a date or a time for that yet, but their members will vote. And if they vote to remain in the Butte House Agreement, then nothing changes. However, if they vote to pull out of the Butte House Agreement, then what happens? Well, immediately, the only thing that happens immediately is their ministers, who are Harvie and Slater, will step down from government. And that, I don't think that'd be a bad idea, because there's a couple of cranks, in my opinion. But to be the government in Scotland, now they've already voted, the Parliament has already voted to allow the SNP to pick their First Minister, so that's what happened with Sturgeon when we had a hung Parliament after the last election. And that will remain the case. However, that will only remain the case while the government can get budgets accepted through Parliament. The minute that stops, if the SNP don't get a budget through Parliament because they've got a hung Parliament again, then there is an immediate call for an election, which would be quite nice. So it's not bizarre to suggest that by the end of this year, beginning of next year, we might have a position where the Scottish Government can't get their budget accepted because there's no need for anybody to vote to accept that budget. And if the only people that vote to accept the budgets in Parliament are the SNP, then it would fail. Budget fails, automatic election. That would be fantastic. What I think will happen is, though, even if they do come out of the Butte House Agreement, SNP will be scampering about looking for pals. They ain't going to find any in any of the main parties, and the only party they could find favour with would be the the Greens. So you can imagine that between now and the end of the year, if indeed the Greens pull out of government, that they'll try their very best to pander to every single thing in the Green Party. The Green Party can then decide to agree or not agree at the next budget. Now, the budget, I don't think is due till about February 2025, but it starts getting rolled out at the end of this year. And if they ain't going to get it through Parliament, we have an election. I, for one, would love that. And I don't think I'd be alone. So it'd be a fantastic situation to be in, whereby we could be looking at two elections, Westminster and Scottish elections, in a very short timescale, because I think it's probable that the Westminster election, although it could be called at any time, it looks as if it's going to be towards the end of the year, probably October/November. And months after that, we could be looking at having a Scottish election as well. We could destroy the SNP in the next 12 months if things pan out properly. And that, my friends, would be top of the pops, right? So, if you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. If you've not already done so, please consider subscribing. Get involved with the comments below, they're always good banter. And as I say, all my videos, the most important thing, as long as you are not Humza Yousaf, the SNP, or the remaining and fastly reducing cult members, everybody else, have a great day. Cheery bye now.